Welcome to Seize the Mains by Malhotra's IS Academy. I am Surbhi Sardana and this is Season 3 of our Daily Answer Writing Initiative. This initiative is running in coordination with our website. Here in Seize the Mains, we discuss one question and one model answer from current affairs from Monday to Saturday. How it works is that you learn answer writing here and you write your own model answers and you send them to us by posting those answers on our website, which is rajisacademy.com. Here in the mains answer writing section, all the questions with the model answers discussed till date on Seize the Mains have been uploaded. Post your answers in the comment section under every question. Get it evaluated by our experts in the next 48 hours entirely free of cost. Over time, you will realize that this initiative is helping you a lot to improve your answer writing skills. There are n number of students who have stayed with us since day one and many students who started in between, and they have seen immense improvement in their answer writing skills and capabilities, how to write, how to present answer, in their grammar, in their handwriting, use of flowcharts, use of diagrams. Everything that requires to write a good answer, every part of their answer writing practice has seen improvement. So do not delay. If you are an aspiring civil servant, just join the initiative today. Send your answers to us on rajisacademy.com. The link is available in the description. Let's proceed to our today's discussion. Today's discussion is on the topic of domestic violence. Again, very sensitive topic and very much expected in the society part of your paper in GS paper 1 or GS paper 2, which talks about the schemes or policies of government with regards to the vulnerable sections of population. So both GS paper 1 and GS paper 2 can have question like this there. The question for day 130 is, what are the factors responsible for high prevalence of domestic violence in Indian families? Enumerate the laws in place to protect the victims. Answer in 250 words. So let's look at this question once again. Let's look at the first part of this question. What are the factors responsible for high prevalence of domestic violence in Indian families? See, the first part of the question gives a clear idea that there is some statistics that the examiner knows about, the person who has written this question knows about, that prevalence of domestic violence in Indian families is very high. So yes, what you can do is in your introduction talk about some statistics, some report or some data talking about domestic violence in Indian families. That could be one approach. Or what you can do is talk about some acts. If you see this question in GS paper 2, definitely talk about some acts regarding domestic violence in India. Define domestic violence, give briefly some outline of domestic violence happening in the country, why is it happening, and then move on to address this first part of the question, that is factors responsible for high prevalence of domestic violence in Indian families. Second part is enumerate the laws in place to protect the victims and answer in 250 words. Enumerate the laws in place. Here you need to understand that this is definitely a question of GS paper 2, because in GS paper 2 policies and laws related to protection of vulnerable sections have been made a part of your syllabus. So that is something you have to cover. And with regards to women's rights or gender based violence or domestic violence, there are 2-3 laws or sections of IPC which have to be covered by you and be used in your mains answers for sure. Answer in 250 words. See, word limit, once you know the answer, writing a 250 words answer is not a problem if you have content available. The question is how to present your content. For example, if we give you the entire topic covered for this question, you might not find it hard to find content, but finishing the answer within 250 words, that is a problem. So what you can do is write your intro. The intro has to be a paragraph. Your body paragraphs can take a flowchart type of approach. Use any tree diagrams, use flowcharts, use schematics to decrease the amount of words that you would otherwise use to write full sentences. So full sentences take a lot of words, but your flowcharts take very less words, plus they are very, easy for the eye to read into. So if some factors are asked, for example, factors responsible for high prevalence of domestic violence in Indian families. So factors can be addressed in a tree approach. Use an approach like this, or use a tree diagram like this, or use a flowchart like this, so that it becomes easier for you to address this question. The second part, we'll be talking about 2 laws only in the body paragraph 2, and let's see what are those 2 laws. But let's first of all write our introduction. In introduction, what are we going to write? Let's see. So first of all, talk about domestic violence, since that is asked in the topic. आपसे क्वेश्चन में डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस के बारे में पूछा हुआ है, तो डोमेस्टिक वायलेंस के बारे में कुछ जनरली बात कीजिए. Talk about something that gives an impression to the examiner कि आपको ये topic on the whole पता है, that you understand this topic as a whole and you have the ability to see it from above. You're not somebody who's studying it as a student. You have that third eye view to see it from above, and talk in a very mature language in your introductions. Use legal reports, use legal statistics, or as I told you in GS paper 2, definitely talk about some laws. So domestic violence is a systematic method to instill fear and subservience in an individual in a domestic setting like a household. So the first line gives you a definition of domestic violence. Domestic violence has been defined by the Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. First line gives you the definition. The second line talks about the legal recognition. The legal recognition in India, it comes from the Domestic Violence Act of Protection of Domestic Violence Act of 2005. So this is the particular act that we are talking about here. It is one of the crimes against women which is linked to their disadvantageous position in the society. Now you have talked about a major cause. It is one of the crimes against women which is linked to their disadvantageous position in the society. Here you have talked about a major cause of domestic violence. So yes, first line talked about the definition. A very small definition that gives a brief outline of domestic violence. Then we talked about legal recognition, and third talks about the major cause that you can see from above, that what is the major cause here. The actual causes we'll be discussing in the body paragraph 1. Then therefore domestic violence is recognized as the significant barriers of empowerment of women with consequences on women's health, well-being and liberty. So fourth one talks about the consequence. Why is it a problem? So if you look at these 4 lines, this paragraph itself, ये जो पूरा paragraph है, this is in itself a complete, it gives you a complete picture of what is being asked in the question, and that is what every introduction of your answer should do. आपकी introduction एक complete picture दे रही होनी चाहिए examiner को. From your introduction, your examiner will be able to understand that whether you are a mature personality or you are just a budding aspirant who's writing mains. So that is something that you need to focus upon. Now in the body paragraph 1, let's come to the causes. See, causes, or I always say that the fodder for body paragraphs that remains more or less the same. 80 to 90%, or let me take it down to at least 70% of your all body paragraphs for all the students who have studied seriously. The body paragraph content stays the same. For the 70% content stays the same. It is the rest 30% that makes the difference here. And where does that rest 30% come from? It comes from your examples that you use. It comes from your presentation. It comes from the keywords that you use. Are you using some terms which have been in current affairs? Are you able to relate your static points with some current affairs and write them as examples? And then it depends on your presentation also. Yes, your handwriting does make a difference. You need not to have a very beautiful handwriting, but it should be very legible and the examiner should like to read it. It should not add stress on the examiner. So work on all these aspects when we are talking about body paragraph. read out this answer, read out with me, then read it out on the website, then try to think what can be the causes of domestic violence. Domestic violence is something that is an issue everybody can relate to. At least we must have heard some stories of friends or neighbors or somebody around us, or we must have read about some stories in the newspapers or watched on television or on series. So this is a very simple question to start with if you're starting answer writing right now. Let's see what are the causes. So the first cause that can be from the end of the person causing domestic violence, the perpetrators of domestic violence. So there could be certain lifestyles which include addiction to smoking, alcohol, drugs, which do not let the person perpetrating domestic violence think about what he or she is doing. So certain lifestyles which include addictions to alcohol, drugs, etc., they promote men to commit domestic violence. See, here when we talk about domestic violence in our civil services examination, we talk domestic violence with regards to women. You can write a gender neutral answer also, but today what we are discussing is domestic violence with respect to women only. The second one is upbringing in patriarchal family structure that encourages traditional gender roles, that for example women should be confined to the households, they should not be allowed to pursue their own careers or have a voice of their own or opinion of their own, even in family matters which might affect them in the short or long run. So upbringing in patriarchal family structures that encourages traditional gender roles, that flows down to the further generations, to the successive generations also. Secondly, there are families in which domestic violence is very prevalent, and when children grow up in these families, it is highly probable that they also might abuse their intimate partners in the long run. They might also become the perpetrators of domestic violence because it affects their mental well-being so badly. So again, this is also not we are talking about the probability here, so it's not 100% situation that we are talking, but you're talking about probabilities when you're talking about causes. The third one is educational level and poverty. Again, very important here. There are important reasons for domestic violence. The fourth one is marriage at a younger age makes women vulnerable to domestic violence, because if women are married at a younger age, we have high prevalence of child marriages also in India. Then obviously these women do not have careers or financial independence or any independence of their own. They're not even probably mature enough to take an independent stand in the family itself or in their own life itself. So that makes them vulnerable to domestic violence, because that puts them in a weaker position. Then you have role of interspousal relationship, sex of the children. Many people want baby boys, but because a lot of daughters are being produced, there is a case of unwanted daughters being discussed in the economic survey at least 2-3 years back. So the sex of the children being born, ownership of property. We are not a very rich country, so to say, so ownership of property and financial issues, yes, that is a problem of domestic violence. And dowry also perpetuates. Yes, we have the Dowry Prohibition Act in our country, running in our country, but as the wedding season arrives, we all understand, we all see around ourselves that dowry is still highly prevalent. Working status, autonomy, religion and caste of the person, etc. These broadly play a role in perpetuating domestic violence. Then this one is a long one and a very important one. Discriminatory social, cultural or religious laws which actually validate domestic violence or oppression on women. Laws, norms and practices that marginalize women and girls and fail to respect their rights. Gender stereotypes are often used to justify violence against women. So men often put up this veil of being aggressive, controlling and dominant, while women are docile, subservient and rely on men as providers. These norms can foster a culture of outright abuse. So we need to grow up from this, because this is aiding domestic violence. It is actually creating a loop. The seventh point here is the collapse of family, social and communal structures and disrupted roles within the family, which often expose women and girls to risk and limit coping mechanisms and avenues for protection and redress. See, we are moving from joint family structure to nuclear family structure, and nuclear families, yes, they do come up with their own benefits, but the side effects were that earlier domestic violence was lesser because it was about the respect and reputation of the entire family. Now, since couples are restricted to nuclear families, they live in individual households, so the mental health issues, they are also rising because of the work culture we have, because of the urbanization, because of the pace of life, and also the incoming of social media. There is disruption of family roles because we are moving towards nuclear families, and crossing of limits where it moves from a normal fight to continued or frequent domestic violence. That is very frequent and that is rising, and that is rising even as we see more urbanization, as we've seen recently also in one of the very gruesome cases. Then we have the judicial barriers. In judicial barriers, either awareness of rights is not there. Even if awareness is there, women feel so left out of the judicial system. They feel that they cannot afford it. Thirdly, they feel that it's their destiny to be at the receiving end of domestic violence, and they're not strong enough to take a stand for themselves because they feel that they might invite insult from the societal angle. Then you have individual barriers also. Threat or fear of stigma, because even after reporting a complaint, there is no guarantee of the woman being safe or secure or being given protection. Isolation and social exclusion and exposure to further violence at the hands of the perpetrator, that always stays in the mind. The community or the authorities, including arrest, detention, ill treatment and punishment. Lack of information about human rights and on how and where to seek remedies. See, many a times women feel that, okay, this is the first time or this is the second time it is happening. I cannot afford to send my husband to jail. If I report to the police authorities, I might that woman might feel that she might be ill-treated there by her husband or by the authorities themselves. So many women just keep themselves in the household and they never report cases of domestic violence because they're too much dependent on the person who is actually causing that violence. So yes, these are the few causes. There are now we come to the body paragraph 2. What are the laws to protect domestic violence cases in India? See, there is the Dowry Prohibition Act also, but again, that does not directly imply protection against domestic violence. So we are not covering that here. We are covering two laws. The first one is Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. That actually gives a definition of domestic violence. Second one is the Section 498A of the Indian Penal Code. See, now what you can do is in your body paragraph 2, you cannot just end your answer here by writing these two laws. That will not be enough. You'll have to explain it a bit. Either explain the provisions of both these laws separately, or what you can do is just write one paragraph under that and highlight the keywords. So prior to the Domestic Violence Act, prior to this act, the law governing cases of domestic violence in India, these were governed by the Section 498 of the IPC. But the problem here was, let's talk about the provision first. The Section 498A, it leads to imprisonment for a term which may extend to 3 years for people, for example, on the husband or the relatives of the husband who are perpetrating domestic violence, who subject the women to cruelty. There are two shortcomings of Section 498A. The first is absence of any provision providing relief or compensation to that woman or that victim. Secondly, only married women were covered in this. So yes, this Domestic Violence Act of 2005, this was brought in by the central government in 2005. It covers physical, sexual, verbal, emotional and economic abuse. The reliefs provided by this act include shelter, medical facilities, protection order, compensation order, etc. See, again, there are many welfare measures covered under this Protection of Women from Domestic Violence Act of 2005. But again, go back to this question. What is the statement of this question? That there is high prevalence of domestic violence in India. So what you have to do is that yes, two acts are there in place, everything is there in place on paper, but still the cases of domestic violence are high. So yes, there is a problem with implementation. and probably we are not addressing the issue rightly. Whenever there is somebody who's carrying out domestic violence, he is not having at the back of his mind what cases would be filed against him. He has anger in his mind, he has that conservative attitude in his mind, he has that aggressive and dominant attitude in his mind that he can actually perpetrate that violence, he can commit that act of violence, he or she can commit that act of violence. That is what goes on his mind. So you cannot just put acts in place and prevent domestic violence cases. That is never going to work out. You'll have to address the root cause of the problem, that is the socio-cultural situations that prevail, the mental health issues that are rising in the country. Yes, we have this mental health act also that is upcoming, but it needs to be addressed as immediately as possible. We need counseling methods for partners, we need counseling clinics for partners, whether after marriages, before marriages, or in relationships. That is the need of the hour. And we need education regarding rights of both the genders or all the genders at school level, starting from school level, because see, we do not live in an orderly society or an orderly world. So the realities need to be taught, the right things need to be taught at the very basic level itself. So that is where the solution lies, and that is something you should be adding in your conclusion. Include all the creativity you can while writing your conclusion. Include all the formal data and statistics you can while writing your introductions. So that is how your answers should be looking like. So violence and threat to violence affects women's ability to participate actively and as equals in many forms of social and political relationships. Why are we writing this line? Because we are finally concluding the answer. We are talking about the effects or consequences of what we talked about in the entire answer. So in view of the prevalence of the problem, it is suggested to have programs that take into account involvement of the community and especially the males for effective as well as fruitful amelioration of the issue. Education of the girls should be encouraged. Effective prevention of child marriages and early marriages, not just child marriages but early marriages, that should be promoted. Prevention of child marriages and early marriages, that should be there, which will undoubtedly work as deterrent to domestic violence. As it is found to be deep rooted in the socio-cultural practices, there is need of major transformation in the socio-cultural milieu. Also talk about including such acts and such rights at the school level, including in that part as that thing as part of curriculum. Talk about addressing mental health issues, talk about counseling. Feel free to write a conclusion that reflects your personality. This is the entire answer for the day. The model answer has been uploaded on our website rajayesacademy.com. Click on the link in the description and it will directly take you to our website. Go to the mains answer writing section, read out the whole answer and post your answers to the website as soon as possible. Also, if you are having some problems in posting on the website, just let us know in the comment section. We will address that as soon as possible. I'll see you with another discussion tomorrow. Till then, all the best.